The battle between feminism and the MRA is being waged right now on the internet. Terms are being thrown around and attacks are being fired. However, in my long-standing opinion, definitions have forever been what causes wars. An isolated or foreign group will quite often create their own language and terminologies and definitions. They will categorize things differently and create their own taboo terms. When these cultures come together, the definition that has emotions and implied meanings in one group may not have the same meaning in the other group, and the groups will use each other's terms, invoking negative emotional reactions out of ignorance about the other's group. They may also, if explained properly in their own way, come to agreement, as some definitions may be more descriptive and accurate than others. But that involves people who understand both cultures to mediate better definitions. Feminism is one of those isolated cultures, sadly, that has had their definitions evolve often independently of the mainstream, and many times they were made to rile people up and get them angry at the system. This was certainly necessary for many years, but as we progress, the language used and the nuances involved can often turn off the potentially most staunch supporter. These words often have other meanings and other baggage tied to them, causing visceral emotional backlashes. Let us go through the terminology and look at what they mean in the feminist or minority community and what the mainstream feminist illiterate person often thinks when you mean them when you say it. Perhaps you will or have thought of better, less charged definitions for these terms to use. Let's start off with patriarchy. A term to the mainstream means a system of rule where the fathers have all the power and the women are subjugated. Feminism did used to fight against that form of patriarchy and never dropped that term once the actual system dissolved. Some feminists still use it to describe the fact that there is still not yet equality in the government and leadership positions in business. Unbeknownst to many of the average community, feminist studies is its own branch of academia with source data and sociological research, and because of this, you will often learn that academia is not really particularly good at naming things. The definitions are meant for people who know what the definitions mean, often borrowing from other words with many other meanings in general use. Patriarchy in some academic feminist terms means a cultural mindset, a construct, and a framed belief and narrative. In the patriarchal social construct, man is strong, woman is weak. Men are pragmatic, women are emotional. Men are disciplinary, women are nurturing. Men are cold and distant, women are open and warm. Men are simple and stubborn, women are complicated, gossipy, and catty. Men are violent, women are peaceful. Men are better drivers, women are better multitaskers. Men are dominant, and women are submissive. This mindset is pervasive throughout the population. I hear over and over again from non-feminist women, well, that's just how men are. Well, I'm a woman, that's just how I am. And if you believe that, you will absolutely limit yourself to those roles, as well as prevent your kids from breaking out of those stereotypes. Anytime a group or culture says, well, that's just how we are, it's an excuse for bad behavior or victimization. The patriarchal construct is exactly why women don't get drafted, men don't feel safe to report being raped, and men lose custody battles so often. It is the very problem feminists are fighting against and MRA complaining about, but are quite often separated by a definition barrier. The patriarchal construct must be crushed for equality in both sexes, but to do so, it may need a better definition of this particular aspect of misogyny so people don't get the immediate emotional response from the confusion. If there is a better term used in feminism, please let me know. Next, let's move on to privilege. The word to most people when they hear it the first time is, you're a spoiled whiting brat who was born with everything handed to you, so just shut the hell up because you have no idea what true suffering is. Anytime I use the word privilege, I get this kind of angry reaction, especially from other white men, and I find the hatred of the word is invasive all over the internet. What the word means in feminist and civil rights circles is simply believing something is not a problem because it has never been a part of your experience. It is caused by the fact that we all see a limited amount of reality and are actually quite oblivious to other parts of reality, and is the main reason why we use science so we can all get a similar understanding of reality. Thanks to the distrust or even ignorance of sociological research, many are completely oblivious to basic plight of another demographic and assume that the other group encounters the same issues they do, especially if you never talk to or listen to that group. This often leads to stereotypical phrases like, the problem with women is, the problem with the blacks are, as if If they would only do this basic thing, they could succeed in a certain area just like you did. People who say that are completely ignorant of the complex problems involved in that group and the hurdles they have to face, and quite often the baggage they have to shed, such as social constructs they have been raised with. I was unaware of the level of sexual harassment that women still face. It's been shown that if you're a liar, you assume everyone else is, and if you tell the truth, you assume everyone else is as well. The same is true about harassment. If you sexually harass, you assume everyone else is doing it. It's a normal part of life. If you don't sexually harass, quite often you don't hang around or interact with the people who do. So many guys like myself are oblivious as to just how rampant and common it is, even to the women you love, because they just don't talk about it. It's something they're used to and often assume everyone else knows still exists. The same is true with racial profiling. Privileged is a very charged word with a very useful description that needs to be in use, but may need a less charged term to help it become better thought. Unlike atheism and agnosticism, which is one-sentence definitions that can be used to correct someone's view on what they mean, these phrases have complex meanings. They use meanings of other words that have implied meanings already. They are going to have to go on a huge correction campaign or reterm the words, which are very useful for people in the know, but act as a barrier often for people on the outside. Lastly, there's the term that is very confusing but actually has definitions in psychology to expand the definition and clarify it a bit. That word is objectification. When a feminist complains about the objectification, here is what most non-feminists hear. You should never find me attractive. You should never think lustful thoughts about me. The only thing you should find attractive about me is my mind and what I have to say. You should never look at porn, which is degrading. If you want to masturbate, you should only be able to listen to and not watch a lecture by a smart woman because you find her brain attractive. Much of this is actually caused by the sex-negative wing of the feminist movement, along with a religious vilification of lust and sex, which has a lot of history in religious first-wave feminism. Sex-positive feminists, however, do not hold this definition at all. Unfortunately, it's rather confused as well. On top of that, scientifically, men are rather bad at judging when a woman is being friendly or genuinely interested in him. Sexual objectification is often a confused category, often confused with old-fashioned Victorian values of you're either a virgin or a slut. The best thing to do when something is vague or confusing is to split it to a deeper level to better define the issue. Objectification is a word we shall ignore for the moment and go into some terms in psychology posted at the bottom of the page. In this social construct at least, men are viewed most often as whole beings. They have both agency, which is the degree to which one is capable of self-control, planning, and acting morally, as well as experience, which is the degree to which one is capable of feeling fear, feeling desire, and feeling pleasure. Both women and men tend to view men as a whole individual. However, both women and men tend to view women in fragmented parts. We're not sure if this is because of our social training or something more biologically innate. This does not seem to hold true for all of the hunter-gatherer tribes, especially in societies where masculinity is the pinnacle of beauty, such as ancient Greeks and Spartans. Women in this society are picked apart to the core. Women instinctively are drawn in psychological studies to analyze parts of a woman's body as opposed to the whole body. Women are viewed and portrayed as either having agency or experience. Most often, when portrayed as having agency, she is often shown as an unattractive, ball-busting bitch. It's rare you find a good movie with a woman who is both attractive and has agency, and even rarer is one that has two or more women with agency and experience who have dialogue, conversations, and those conversations aren't centered around men or relationships. Many movies, especially older ones, would often do that, show a woman with agency, but then in times of emotional weakness, switch her over to the experience mode, being only girly emotional sexual character with no agency. It's quite similar to how modern media shows atheism. We're staunch atheists until life gets tough, and then we start questioning, well, maybe there is a higher power. This picking apart has adverse effects on both men and women. Women feel constantly picked apart and that their only worth in life is how fuckable they are. No one is completely immune from this kind of scrutiny, and it is often a reason for eating disorders on both extremes. It is also great for marketing and body care products because they make bank off a woman's poor self-image. And of course, these self-images are all chopped, cropped, and airbrushed, So basically your standard of beauty is a cartoon character. Of course, often assuming a man hasn't bought into the social pressure to need a supermodel, he's just happy you showed up. It's often other women that are the most judgmental. Men suffer because they are incapable of viewing a woman with both agency and experience. They put the most sexually objectified women on a pedestal of worship and can't approach her or don't treat her with agency, and get angry when she doesn't want him because guys always get the girls in movies, often just for being themselves, even though they just rejected a girl who doesn't meet their sexual objectification standards. They also often don't understand when they should view a woman as a creature of agency and when as one of experience. Eliminating agency is great during a sexual encounter. It can increase orgasm, and since your brain isn't working properly anyway, focusing on their ability to experience sensation, if you are paying attention, can increase your ability to pleasure each other. It's also why you usually don't hear science or philosophy in porn. The problem is that men often eliminate agency of women outside of sexual experiences, and this is the kind of objectification that women are against. Objectification is fine only in a sexually consenting situation. It's a powerful drug, which is why porn is so stimulating. But outside of that, if you're still objectifying women, not only will you have less control over yourself when you're around a woman you're into, thanks to dopamine, hurting your chances of impressing her, you will tend to sideline their opinions and ideas, even if you don't mean to, just because of that bias. These are terms that I have found that create the most confusion between feminists and the rest of society. Some have been purposely confused by anti-feminists, some are confusing for organic reasons, but now that you understand what they mean, when they say things, maybe when you listen to them and disagree with them, it will turn out you are talking about the same thing, just using different definitions.